So I guess one of the first things is, how do you feel seeing your story on this?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. This was such a huge part of our life for, a solid year. We had been super insecure in our own home, in our own yard, and getting the story out there was really important to us, and ultimately it worked, and we got this SVP house shut down. So, yeah.
One of the things I did want is that it kind of made every single community feel like they were gaslighted, like they were the only one.
Oh, yeah.
Like you see Polesville, right? You see all that. How does that feel to also know that everybody else was suffering from it? And they almost acted like you were just being irrational.
Yeah, well, Sarah and I actually reached out to Vincent up in Polesville and Kathy, and so we were able to kind of pull our resources and share stories, and we pretty quickly figured out that, we were all being told the same things, and it really helped us to see through, the lies rather quickly. So,
one of my cousins watched this and he said, "I don't think you can get, I think it was 2,600 people on a thing for a count of 1,900."
Yeah.
Seems a little bit like off-putting, right? Because how would you get that many people to actually do something? It must be a big thing. So a lot of people got activated from it, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it wasn't just our community, it was Thurston County as a whole. I mean, it started very small, and we rallied. I mean, night and day, Carrie, Sarah, and I, and Rachel, we were just, we had video calls for hours every single night when this first started, like figuring out how do we rally, our community and those outside our community that could be affected. When we found out that we could be getting 11 of these SVPs here in Thurston County, it was terrifying, and we thought that everybody needed to know, and we did our best to do that. Oh.
Yeah.
Do I need to talk about microphone? Is it on? Okay.
Yeah. Rachel, did you have any kind of stats you want to give us?
Yeah, sure.
Rachel did this in Antelope Valley. We were at the Antelope Valley Film Festival via Zoom, and terrified everybody, and enough that they actually are doing watch parties because they have horrible people named the Pillicus rapist and everybody else, but they actually hide behind third-party HIPAA laws. California does, so they don't actually tell anybody, and as well as the courts also seal the records, so you can't even find out that these people are doing this stuff.
So when we first started doing this, we found out pretty quickly that there were a lot of people who had gone off the radar, and they were at the Special Commitment Center, and then they were released, and then they were nowhere. They weren't at the Special Commitment Center, they weren't at the LRAs they were supposed to be at, and so Rachel did a fabulous job of compiling an Excel spreadsheet with every single person who ever stepped foot on the Special Commitment Center on McNeil Island, where they went after that, and we were able to find out, specifically, where they had gone, where they had absconded from, and, exactly who we had never even seen again. And, there's still plenty of people missing, but go ahead and share your information, yeah.
So if you are familiar with this area right now, if you've ever been to Sylvester Park, which is just right up the road, you can almost see it from the campus way. So we have a level 2 sex offender that's there, right up in Sylvester Park, where we can go get sushi from that little joint right there. There's also another level 3 sex offender, so a little further down, we go to the old pizzeria. So this is just a couple blocks further down. So these are level 3, so now people level 3. But if you just widen that just a little bit, you'll have 8 registered sex offenders just within 2 miles of here. So this is where you're talking about going just to the hands-on children's museum, the marina. That's not very far from here, if you're familiar with this place, right? It's a stone throw. You can walk there from here. It's no big deal, right? So then you just a little further out, it's 5 miles to there's 41 registered sex offenders just within 5 miles of this area here. Okay? So that'll take you to St. Martin's University, that'll take you to the Edinburgh State College, that'll take you to Kamada Airport. That's not very far. I drive over that very frequently. I'm sure that a lot of you do too as well. So when we talk about the numbers are just mind-boggling. There are over 17,500 registered sex offenders in the state of Washington. And when we spoke with it the other time, they said, oh, well, why are you really focusing on the level 2 and 3? The other one, the 1 and 2 data. And I felt like I didn't articulate it well then. But when we started focused on this, we realized it was much bigger than our community. It was much bigger. It was statewide, and it's happening in other states as well. So I took all the rosters. We had about 400 names on the roster. You know what's really scary? Is that almost 200 of those names have been unconditionally released. So these are people that are already fully out into the community. The only requirement they have now is to register as a sex offender. That's it. That's it. So this happens throughout the entire state. So to make it even more relevant, why do we care about this today? Last month, the United States Marshal put out a press release that says, hey, we caught this guy. He's been under the radar for a year. He is an unconditionally released sexually violent predator who was living in his boat that he just anchored in Popo. He had a view of the LRA that Troy talked about in his film. He was sitting there for a year. He'd been trying to leave the country, trying to leave the state, and he was refusing to register as a sex offender. They caught up to him. Okay? And then we went back and we found where now he's the governor, but then he was the attorney general about Ferguson, and put out a press release about the guy, and he said, hey, I'm so glad we caught him. We really care about the community safety here. I thought, well, great, but then the guy actually let him go. Then I went further and I found a daily Olympia article from 2013 that said they interviewed him, and he said, let me see if I can find the actual words that he used. He said, your chance of getting out is practically zero until you're so old, they figure you're not going to reoffend anymore. He was 45 years old when he said that 10 years ago, and he was exactly right. 10 years later, they let him out. And then he started violating again out in the community. So this is what I've been tracking. We haven't stopped in the last 2 years. We've been tracking the unconditional release SCP because we were told in our Death by PowerPoint webinar that we got from DSHS, there's never been a conviction of a hands-on offense by an SCP. I took that down because they repeated it. And that's not true. You know what it is that they let them go and they don't track them anymore. And the out-of-town was caught up to them in August, and they found some terrible statistics. They were going to other states and reoffending. But we have plausible deniability because DSHS says we don't track them anymore. In fact, the Attorney General's office said to me in an email, we actually don't get these reports from DSHS anymore about any kinds of violations or where the SCPs are. We've asked them to maintain those records. We don't want them. That blew me away when I went to try to look for it, and they would not give them to me. I've still been waiting. I've been waiting now for 2 years for my actual public record request to be completed right now for one of them. It's unreal. The transparency was the big issue for me. I've worked in state government for 30 years, and I thought, I know where to go to get these documents. They are subject to public disclosure. Let's go get them. I worked in law enforcement, and I thought I knew exactly where to go. I was shocked because if they didn't have the documents, of course they wanted to say that everything was HIPAA protected. It's a matter of their treatment plan, so therefore we don't have to release that information to you. The violations were scary. This state did not track violations of conditional release in any aggregate form. No agency does that right now. And I believe that part of the plausible deniability, part of the solution is to start tracking that. Isn't that the best metric to look at? To say, wow, we've had a reduction in these violations. This is getting better. Our treatment is working. That's going to be the most germane and critical piece of data that you can have. And that blows me away. Again, as a state employee, we love as a state to spend money on all of these reports and coming and telling us how to do our job better. Yet we've never tracked that. That blew me away. The only thing they tracked is violations at the secure community transition facility. They have 2 of them in the state. One is on the Seal Island, and one of them is in King County. They have about 48 beds. Currently, they only have 17 of those beds built. Instead, they're pushing them out to the communities. I don't know why we're not doing that. These secure community transition facilities have fences, alarm systems. They have 24/7 Department of Courts and DSHS employees watching them, chaperoning them. They are secure facilities. So in 2022, they ran a report and they said, oops, we have 24% of the guys here are reoffending. Well, not necessarily sexually, but they're violating the conditions of their release to be here. This is in a controlled facility, guys. And next year, they ran the same report, and that violation of conditions of release is at 34%. So it increased by another 10%. So we're talking about 1 out of 3 of these violators can't be trusted when they've already been partially released in the step-down unit. But we're going to trust them now and move them on into the community. And that is dangerous and that's reckless. And the amount of money that it costs to continue to run McNeil Island, I think my child is worth it. It's incredibly expensive. $38,000 for one of them out on an LRA here in our community. That blew me away. She's going to make $1 million a year just having a handful of these in that home. And we were gaslit, absolutely, that's great credit. 100% gaslit.
The one thing that I received somebody who said, aren't you picking on Kyle Sheed? He's the 2004 guy, the Sosa, the job. The thing is, I have his entire record. He was supposed to get off after 2 years, so 2002 to 2004. He stayed on because he kept reviolating until 2021. This idea that, somehow, it wasn't just minor violations. It was also sitting next to kids at church that he didn't know and everything else. So this idea that somehow it's not, just because he wasn't put on the island or whatever. He's a house painter, so he now has the ability because he's off that registry. And so is Joseph Lehman Jr., who goes into people's homes and fixes computers. So you tell me. So I just find it alarming. Yeah.
So thank you all for all your work. One of the things that I see a correlation here between some of your work and what the documentary said. Much of this trauma starts in childhood, so it's created and perpetuated by the offenders. They're assaulted as a child, then it goes on again, but they become the offenders later on in life, is what it appears to me to be. And I see a correlation to that, what's going on in our public schools right now, with the hiding of information and the sexualization and a lot of stuff. What is your experience with it? Is that a fair assessment?
I don't have a voice, so bear with me. I think Kendahl would be.
I don't really know.
Actually, I see more of a correlation with what Earth, Feather Sovereign's been dealing with missing indigenous women. Where do you think they go? They go to places that can't be tracked.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sorry, they go to places where you're not, and, she's fought it for a long time. And it's the indifference that, to me, is criminal.
Human trafficking.
Yeah, I mean, she fought it back when, I was here in the ledge when you with the guitar. A lot of people wouldn't talk to you. Gina Mossbrucker was probably the only one. Now everyone wants to hijack it, and that's great. But the thing is, at the time, nobody talked about it. And I still think that's where a lot of these sexual offenders go. It's not just human trafficking, but everything other, horrible that can happen. And I think that they go where they don't think there's eyeballs.
Can I also share, when we're talking about schools, the Sex Offender Policy Board recently did an entire matrix study where they reevaluated what they were going to recommend for the sentencing guidelines for some sex offenses. And one of the things that was brought up was custodial sexual misconduct. So we're talking about schools, we're talking about teachers, coaches, counselors, and things like that. And it was very, very difficult to sit through those meetings. As someone who's a member of the public, you're not allowed to speak in those meetings. You get maybe a 60 to 90 second chance to speak at the very end of the meeting. They're not required to answer any of your questions or even respond to you. And typically when I ask questions, they just say next, and they want to talk to somebody next. But I was absolutely blown away by the compositions about them wanting to reduce the sentencing for some significantly dangerous kinds of criminal activity directed towards children, especially in school. That was really disheartening. They ended up giving the report to the legislature and to the Sentencing Guidelines Commission about that, and that is available online. So I recommend, if you're curious about what's going on with schools, as part of that.
The Sex Offender Policy Board, by the way, is stacked with people that have a vested interest. Brad Mayhew, who runs it, actually defends some of the largest, custodial sex offenses and everything, and they've watered down a lot of the laws. You're going to see one that's already getting through onto the Senate floor. What's that bill? It's already made it through the House, but it will repeal the Community Protection Plan. And it says, well, this is just for people that are insane, like the Eric Wyatt, who's insane. But the problem is they also deem anybody on the Special Commitment Center as having a brain abnormality. So they're going to start pushing that and getting those people out, and then on track.
So that is House Bill 1390 that made it all the way through the House of Representatives and had a hearing, I believe, in the Senate committee today. We talked about that. One thing they wanted to do away, they want to repeal the community protection program. That at least gives them some oversight as a group of people that are high acuity, what they call. So that they're not going to just be dispersed. Where are they going to go? They're going to be dispersed into other homes, possibly with aging, elderly, and other disabled persons who are some of the most vulnerable population. But I also would really love to address with Earth Civil Sovereign. One of the things that we talked about was Inslee, when they tried to insert it as a budget proviso to include notification to the tribes when an SCP is released out. And I had just recently at that time sat in on a task force meeting about missing and endangered Indigenous persons. And unfortunately, even though the governor's office actually participated in drafting this budget proviso to provide for tribal notification, he designed out and vetoed it. And they didn't give a reason why except to say that it was too administratively burdensome. So I apologize to you because I don't think that our tribes are administratively burdensome to try to keep them safe. So I believe that Earth Civil Sovereign is the person in charge of the missing and murdered Indigenous women in Washington group. So I think it's absolutely incredibly important that the tribes get together. Muckleshoot tribe actually got together and put money down and gave legal assistance to the community of Enumclaw. And they went to court and they actually made it so that the SVPs there on site in Enumclaw were not allowed to trespass onto tribal land. And I think it's important that we all stay informed and engaged as much as possible, no matter where we live. This is coming to everyone's backyard. This is not just an in our backyard thing.
Stephen Knapp, when he was picked up by the woman that was not his wife, that was 5 times. And they don't know where he went. They don't know what he did. And they actually only know one time he met with one of the others from the LRA from Polesville.
Yeah, Randy Thompson,
Yeah. And so
who specifically told he could not have any kind of communication with.
And then another one was fully released, was honking his horn as he was driving by, and there were other things. They were networking. So it doesn't just end at a certain thing. So.
I apologize if I missed it, but with the individuals who did go tonight on that LRA, did that end up going somewhere else?
Yeah. They went into transition, or they went into Puyallup.
So existing LRAs?
Yeah, there's one in Spanaway. And then Joseph McKee, who always goes under the radar, even though he's at one time in Soto in 2010, he was held behind a 10,000-pound magnetic door. He had 27 staff only dedicated to him. He had 30 cameras. He had barbed wire. He had, I think, 4 police officers full-time to him. He was the most modern man in the state. 2012, they just let him out, dumped him in Walla Walla, did not tell the residents, and not the penitentiary. That's the confusion. They dropped him right into Walla Walla. And his big advocacy is because he can't really sell his fly fishing gear. Is that why he's upset that he's on level 3 sex offender? He's violated that thing so many times, and he was, I don't know what happened at UW in 1972 because, you had Bundy at the same time, but Joseph was lurking through apartments doing all this stuff, but, so he was just as bad, but he flew under the radar in some ways because of somebody else horrific. So that's where with sex crimes, unfortunately, we do not register them the same as serial killers, which I think it's still belonging. So.
But once they are deemed to be able to go out with these LRAs, it goes to a judge, and the judge just signs off on it, and then they have to be placed somewhere in the state. They can't stay in. Once that's signed by a judge, they're released somewhere. And so that guy was lined up to come to Tenino, and when he didn't, they found wherever they could fit him in. So.
I'm in awe of the people here that advocate for their community and their activating in their community. My wife is one of those. I know it's late, but I'll just say, our biggest concern are the ones that aren't caught. But the ones that are caught, that do not get fully prosecuted and get that label attached to them so that they can keep into the system of this mandatory sentencing. Some of them are teachers in schools.
Sure.
We just had one released recently, spent 1 day in jail, brutally sexually molested a child for 2 years, and was offered by the Thurston County Prosecutor's Office in Olympia that 1 day in jail before he was bailed out. Will never go to jail again for that. May not even lose his teaching certificate in Washington State. So, and that is because of an elected official who decided to offer that. And so that he'll never be in that system. So those are the ones that we need to keep our eyes out for and keep putting pressure on places like the prosecutor's office and the local judges and the system in general. But I just applaud the work that all of you are doing there. It's amazing.
I can't say, I apologize, I don't know this, but that same prosecutor that was on that case with that teacher was the same prosecutor who had backed us during this LRA process. So it just shows how 2 years ago he was on our side, but now he's willing to let his teacher go about his business. So that just really shows that the community needs to rally. We may not have the SVPs now, but we still have the level 3s. For my job, I go to a sex offender meeting once a month, and the amount of level 3s that are out in the community is alarming, but yet the community does not know about those level 3s. So I think that's why it's important for all of us to, I guess, network, if you will, whether you are on, tribal land or not. We all need to stick together and say, hey, this is who's in our community. This is not the offense. We're not being gaslit. It's reality. So whether you're a level 3 sex offender here right by, Sylvester Park, they're everywhere. And I think that's what we need.
Well, a lot of them are homeless too, right? Because
we have a lot that don't have.
Yeah, so they
don't
have no
residence.
registered address. They could be anything.
Yeah.
So it's going to be weird, but I'm going to take you to Mordor, but back to the Shire. What really activated for me was calling up one of the ladies. It was that clinical scoring thing. And she told me how she wouldn't talk on the record, but it was Mount Bullshit. Everything was Mount Bullshit. And she goes, I'm not really going to tell you, but you can probably find it. And when you start seeing that even the judges don't believe in it, but they still clear it, to me, that was like, wait, what? So you're still allowing Mount Bullshit, even though you know it's bullshit. And that was the part, beyond their story. And I get that it's dense, but just the idea that I could, and they were getting millions of dollars. Woolert was getting millions of dollars. And the guy, one lady, Helmus, who is even describes him, whatever, wouldn't talk on the record, but she was like, well, he's old now. And I'm like, I don't care if he's 900 years old. He let, 50 people probably walk. And, it's great to excuse that, but who else got affected by it? So.
I agree with that. I also want to point out that a lot of the judges that are in the system right now are not elected judges. A lot of them are appointed. So it makes sense for us to try to really rally some judicial officers to run for office, to support them when they do, to support them with their good decisions. And we've also seen both in Tenino and in Ennisfall situations where the judge got a whole lot of letters and emails and phone calls, and then they backed up. So the one doing the shift Andy was talking about, where somebody from POC called him up on them getting like crazy on the phone, that was the George Hancock, and he was going to be placed potentially in Rochester. And it was very hush-hush. They had already tried this at LRA before, and it had failed. His mother and his sister were supposed to be supervising him, and on court record they said, we did not read the court information about what his risks were. We thought it was okay for him to be around kids. It's not like he's gonna molest them in the hallway. That's exactly what he did. He molested his 2 nieces immediately when he placed it. So she was doing for him to be able to stay in a trailer in her yard. Again, close to down sports field that a lot of our kids play at in Rochester, Washington. It's really a way that they were considering this, and they were doing it very quietly. The community has no voice and no legal standing in these hearings. And one of the things that the county prosecutor's office did, I'm so proud of them, they wrote a formal letter and they called in and they really just showed up for the community with the Sex Offender Policy Board. And they said, what can we do to make sure that at least the prosecuting attorney's office gets legal standing so that we can speak up if a judge is considering placing someone in our community? And they absolutely shut that down. It's incredibly unprofessional. I think it was June 3rd of 2023 meeting. It's all online. You can watch it for yourself. It was unreal. It was Brad Mary Hughes, the chairman of the Sex Offender Policy Board. And this is the kind of reaction response that a lot of public members get.
Do you guys still have that Facebook page that was,
Yes.
you guys have a big, huge following on that, didn't you?
Yes.
Do you guys still use that?
Yeah, we're not as active in it, but it's still there. It's called Keep Washington Safe now. So
It's called Keep Washington Safe.
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 It was safe.
Yes.
How many followers are on there? I mean,
Probably like 3,000. Yeah. The other thing, the people who were being placed in Thurston County, Kitsap County judge was the one that approved it, and there was no oversight. They didn't really know where they were going or anything. They had no knowledge of the area or anything. So it's not like it's local judges that are saying, you know, oh, I've looked into this and I have all the details and I'm going to place them somewhere where I know that they're going to be safe. It's just people who are just signing paperwork and pushing them through not knowing exactly what it is.
And I do want to call out Mary Lisa. She held me a little bit to task of getting more public documents and some things. She's like, I'm not talking to you until you get this. It was actually good. So it worked out, right? So, but it was healthy. But it was good to talk to everybody that we had in there interviewed, and they gave their time, which is a big thing. So, any other questions? Thank you very much for coming.